Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Miguel Ribeiro. Miguel is the founder and owner of VBS IT Services, a thriving IT company he started back in 2007. Miguel's story is nothing short of inspiring, from self-taught beginnings in IT to overcoming personal challenges like a year-long recovery from a concussion, which tested his leadership and the systems he had built for his company. His journey embodies the essence of grit and determination, and we're so excited to have him share his insights on scaling a business, embracing innovation, and thriving against all odds. Hi, Miguel. How are you today?
Doing awesome, Sonia. Thanks for having this opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, of course. It's good to see you again. It's been a little while, and I'm glad we're connecting and we're going to have this conversation today.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's dig right in, right? There's no time like the present. Can you just share a little bit about your journey and what led you to become an entrepreneur and start VBS IT Services?
Prior to starting VBS, I was also in technology, doing ERP and CRM systems, so enterprise resource planning and CRM. So I've had a long history of technology, and I've carried those skills in from my past into VBS. So we still do CRM systems, but we work with other providers for ERP. Our focus nowadays is cybersecurity and manage IT services at VBS, and also AI workflow automation and CRM systems. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis. What we love about what we do and why we do it is that it's impactful for the clients that we serve. It helps them not only ensure that their networks and their technology is working optimal, but it also helps them grow their business when we start automating. Now, why did I start this business?
That's the money question.
Yeah. I saw a need for enterprise level solutions, IT solutions, as well as services to deliver to small, mid-sized businesses. I felt they were underserved, and my mission was to bring the enterprise level solutions and services to small, mid-sized businesses at an affordable cost. And that's what we've been focused on since inception. And our mission is to have customers for life. And so far, we've been holding to that mission. So it's been an exciting journey. It's never a dull moment, as you can imagine, with technology. If you're involved in technology, you know what it's like, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. And once we start working with a client and things kind of settle, and we've got control of things, and the network is working optimally, then it gets kind of boring, to be honest. But that's where AI and CRM solutions come in. We love to get involved in that kind of work because we're really getting to know the client. So, when you ask me why did I start this, that's another reason. Just being able to help small business thrive. That was, something that I felt was really important for small businesses.
Did you always inspire to be an entrepreneur, or did it happen by accident?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, we were brought up with the entrepreneurial spirit from my father.
Mm.
I'm the eldest of three. My younger brother also runs a technology company, and my sister is also self-employed in the construction industry. So, you
Okay.
know, it kind of filtered through
Yeah.
to all of us, and I think it was just a natural thing. I mean, at
Mm-hmm.
one point, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I think we all hit that period in our lives where we're
Mm-hmm.
not sure about what the right direction is. And then an opportunity just arose, and I got started in technology. But prior to that, I will tell you that I had a grass cutting company and window cleaning. We did a whole bunch of different stuff. I was maybe about 16 years old, and we did all these services for residential um, properties, and
Mm.
it just I think it got me curious about the whole idea of running my own business for
Yeah.
real. That at that time was just for fun, right?
Yeah. I mean,
and
you're Portuguese, so of course you were doing that at such a young age.
yeah,
I
that's
don't know.
true.
We're Portuguese. Like we start working at a very young age for some odd reason.
Yes, I actually started working earlier. I was 13 when I had my first
Your first job?
paper route.
Okay.
And yes, and then I went to work for McDonald's, afterwards. So I actually, at the same time, I had two jobs working at McDonald's and my paper route.
Mm. Yeah.
So yes, you're right. We do start early, but I think that's also common for a lot of, other Europeans and
Mm-hmm.
even Asians, for example. We're just brought up that way to
Yeah,
start being independent at an early age.
for
And
sure.
Sonia, I think all of that helped me to get to where I am today
Yeah.
because it was ingrained in my brain to just be independent,
Yeah.
right?
And look where you are now.
Yes, yes, very independent.
Yeah.
I would call myself interdependent, right?
Okay.
Because I am dependent on the people I work with and my
Yeah.
clients and my suppliers. That's all part of the puzzle, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you never do it on your own.
No.
It's a combined effort,
Yeah.
and it's a team effort as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you describe as your biggest challenge in those early stages when you started out?
Yeah. Well, to your comment, we start working early at a young age. Uh, One of the other things that was ingrained in my head was to just be successful and
Mm,
work hard to be successful. That was
right.
ingrained in my head, and so that's what I did. I worked 80-hour weeks, week in, week out, and hardly ever took time off. So that was a bit of a challenge, especially because I had a young child at the time. I was married and had those responsibilities. So balancing that was quite a challenge, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Yeah.
And and I think it eventually got the better of me, and I made some life changes afterwards. But so that was one of the biggest challenge. As you start scaling, I'm sure every business goes through this. Being able to fund that growth can be a bit of a challenge. Sure, you could throw your own money into it, but is it even enough?
Mm-hmm.
And determining, what kind of funding do you need for that level of growth. That's also a bit of a challenge because you're involved in running the business on a day-to-day basis, managing things, and then you have to kind of step back and think. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
really think hard about where do you want to go? You have to have those goals and objectives, and how are you going to reach that, those
Mm-hmm.
goals and objectives? And I find that that's an area where a lot of small business owners don't put enough thought into. So, I reached the point where I had to put some thought into it, and I that's where things started to really evolve for me. So, yeah, those are, I think, my two biggest challenges: working way too hard and and finding ways to build and scale the business.
Which goes into, you sort of already answered my question, but I still want to go into it a little bit further. Like as you grew, it comes with a whole set of new problems, and you mentioned like funding. What was your biggest challenge in when you started to scale?
Uh, it feels like chaos at times, right?
Yeah.
Be because so much is changing so rapidly, and it does take some time to get used to it, and especially takes time to get used to it if you are, type A personality,
Mm-hmm.
controlling and maybe even a micromanager. Yeah, that doesn't work.
No, it really doesn't. It only works for so long until it doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
So adapting to the change, I think, can be a little tough at times, especially if you haven't had a lot of experience
Mm-hmm.
with dealing with that change. And then, also letting go of stuff that you should not be doing, right?
Mm. You and I
Um,
have talked about this.
yes, delegate, delegate, delegate. If it's something that someone on your team can do, delegate, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have somebody that can do it, hire somebody. If you're not ready
Yeah.
to hire somebody, okay, maybe you're stuck doing it for now, but find a way to, replace yourself with somebody who
Yeah.
can continue doing that. So I think that's a big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those that either are just starting out or haven't had a lot of experience building a
Hmm.
business. Just letting go of that stuff is not easy for everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also want to talk a little bit about your actual service because you're actually helping my company now do a whole assessment. But I remember when you and I were talking about it, it was like, wait, why haven't I done this? So, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that are listening to the show, I want to talk about uh, the importance of not having your company assessed and not having cybersecurity in place, and what are the risks, because everyone always thinks like it's never going to happen to me until it does. So for our listeners that are starting out, what advice do you have for them to go about it the right way versus waiting for something to happen, and the risk is a lot higher because right now they're in year 1, but if it happens in year 10, it's going to have a much bigger impact, right?
Yes. So I will say, look, you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, excuse me, that's not something you're going to think about on a day-to-day basis. On a day-to-day, you're thinking about serving your clients, growing the business, taking care of your employees, making sure you have the right suppliers, paying the bills, a whole bunch of different things that are part of running a business. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to think about things you don't know are a risk, right? And so I think that's the first part, is that people need to find time in their schedule to think about their business, strategize, put goals in place, think about risk remediation, things of that nature. So I think that's the first starting point. You need to give
Mm-hmm.
yourself some time. I do that every Friday. All right. So every Friday I go through a list that I called parked items. So parked items, what I do is when an idea pops into my mind, I put it in my parked items. And I don't think about it until I have time to think about it. And then I go through my parked items and I decide which ones are most impactful for my business. Let's focus
Mm.
on maybe 1 to 3 items at the most. right? Because you don't want to overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, follow through and make some decisions, take some action on that idea. So I think that's the first part. You need to give yourself an opportunity to think about strategy and planning in your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that way, if you are thinking about risk, you can think about, all right, what happens if there's a cybersecurity incident? How am I going to deal with it? And then you start realizing, wow, hold on a minute. I don't have all the pieces together that are part of the puzzle. And then you might want to reach out to somebody who can help you. But I will say
Mm-hmm.
this, Sonia, I just met with a prospective client this week and delivered an assessment result presentation. And, we have a whole process. And part of the process is we deliver, before I met with him, I delivered what we call our tool, which is essentially an IT services buyer's guide. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 20 some odd pages, and it talks about, in layman's terms, why a business would need our services and what value do we bring to the organization. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a impromptu way to that leads into our cybersecurity assessment review meeting, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as I walked in the office, he said to me, Miguel, I read through your buyer's guide and I was impressed that, first of all, he read through it.
I
He
know.
said,
I was just gonna say he read it. Wow.
yeah, he read through the whole thing, he said. So I was impressed by that because usually people just kind of scan it, right?
Yeah.
And he says to me before I even get started, like I just walked in the door and he says, we really need you.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, whoa.
This is
uh,
great.
yeah, I mean, sure, I'd love to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't expecting it, right? Because usually people are a little bit shy initially, right? Because they don't know what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so then I delivered the assessment, and at the end, he was literally blown away. He was impressed with what we delivered. It wasn't just, here's what's wrong with your business, it was an educational experience for them. Because again, they don't know what they don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
he had no idea that what, the gaps that we found within the organization existed. And he had no idea that he was at such risk. So, we're now talking about the next step. I don't want to overspeak, but he pretty much
Mm-hmm.
gave me, a verbal go ahead, and we'll see where it takes. But my point is this: that he is a typical small business owner. Small business owners don't have time to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know
Yeah.
who to contact to for help. And when they start doing a search, if you ever try and do this, Sonia, you'll be blown away with how many options there are and
Mm.
how confusing it is to find somebody like me on the internet,
Yeah.
right? And so then they decide not to decide, right? That is the
Yeah.
decision. And part of it may also be that they're in denial. You mentioned
Yeah.
it'll never happen to me. So yes, that's part of it as well. It's a real challenge. It really is a
Yeah.
challenge because a lot of these organizations are at high risk and they have no idea until something happens. And then we get that frantic call in the middle of the night, right? This is
Yeah.
why we have 24/7 answering
Yeah.
because it happens.
But to a point, which is a conversation you and I had offline, a lot of companies also like when it comes to development. So you have your software built, you hire a company to build it for you. You think they're doing their due diligence, and you and I have encountered this many times in our careers in our lives, where a vendor, someone will come to you and say, like, I thought my software was secure, but I'm not really quite sure. Now my customers are asking me questions because, I'm getting into maybe high risk industries. Like we do a lot of work in mining, and security is always the number one question. And I don't think sometimes clients think about, when that they can be looking at security at those very early stages, even in the development phase. But how do you hire a company that's actually going to take care of that for you when you don't know, right? And then you encounter your software's built, your business is running, and all of a sudden you're getting asked these questions, and you realize that you might have to start from scratch,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's a hard pill to swallow when you
Right,
have
because
to
you just
start
don't
from
know,
scratch. No,
and
you don't
you're
know.
depending on other people to sort of take that step for you, right?
Yeah, and you and I have come across this where software is built in such a way that without security in mind, right?
Yeah,
And the code could potentially be vulnerable within the software. And of course, an end user wouldn't know that. They wouldn't
yeah,
even know to ask for security within the build of their software because that's
yeah,
not what they do. That should be up to the third-party developer or the company that the customer is hiring. That should be their responsibility.
yeah,
But unfortunately, especially when you're hiring somebody overseas, that's not the objective. The
yeah,
objective is to deliver low cost options. That's really
yeah.
what we focus on. Because at the end of the day, if you're hiring somebody overseas, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that, you know,
Cheap
less
labor.
exactly less costly option. So
Yeah,
just give me that. But they don't realize that they're partnering with someone that may not be a good partner, may not take security seriously. And you talk about mining industry being well governed from a standards perspective, but it shouldn't be just mining.
yeah,
uh, every industry nowadays, you're dealing with confidential information, customer private information, and that information ends up in the wrong hands. We're all going to be in trouble, right?
yeah.
So every organization should be responsible to choose the right partners that can keep their data secure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's something important to talk about and just let people know, like have that at top of the mind as you're starting out your business. It's something that's going to be, I think it's one of the most critical things to really think about.
It is, and especially in small business, because they're the low-hanging fruit for cyber criminals, right?
Yeah.
Cyber criminals want the easy stuff. That why go for the hard stuff when you can go infiltrate an easy to access network? It's kind of like
Mm,
they're looking for the car in the parking lot that has the unlocked doors.
yeah.
That's what they're looking for. Easy access. So yes, I agree with you. Even small business, when starting out, you should think about security. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do that is inexpensive and free to make sure
Hmm.
that you set up security. Like multi-factor authentication is a no-brainer,
Yeah.
right? Use multi-factor authentication on every login. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So in 2012, you faced a significant personal challenge with a concussion that kept you from work for about a year. How did this affect your business? And I have follow-up questions to that already.
Okay. Yeah. Well, earlier I said that I was brought up to work hard, and I did. I worked 80-hour weeks, and eventually it caught up to me.
Mm,
So I was, I suffered a concussion. Very simple. I just blanked out at an IT conference, and my momentum carried me into a concrete wall. And
mm,
I didn't know that I had the concussion until the next day, actually, when I guess my body kind of settled, and I had a severe anxiety attack. I ended up in the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack at the time. So this was 2012. It was quite some time ago. Confirmed that I was all healthy, not an issue there. But they identified that I had, an anxiety attack, and so that became my life for the next year and a half, dealing with severe anxiety. I mean, severe
Mm,
to the point where I couldn't stand up. I couldn't do anything. In fact,
mm.
for the first 3 months, I couldn't even speak.
Wow.
I couldn't put words together. My brain just wasn't functioning properly. I had to stay in a dark room for 5 days straight, doing nothing. No TV, no technology, nothing. I couldn't even read.
Wow.
Literally doing nothing. You know how hard that is?
I can imagine. I mean, like, what did you do? Just think?
I don't think I even thought. I just
Wow.
I just
I
kind of
mean,
tuned out for five
for
days.
5 days, that's
Yeah,
insane.
because my brain needed to settle. My brain needed to recover, and
Mm,
this is what the doctor told me. So I listened to the doctor. Funny enough, the doctor also told me you need 8 hours sleep. I said, "Wow, 8 hours? I haven't slept 8 hours in like 15 years." I was living
right.
on maybe 5 hours sleep. But yeah, it changed my life. That's the first thing I did is I started sleeping 8 hours.
Yeah.
And I started feeling a little bit better and less anxious. It took me a year to recover. During that year, I did not work in my business.
Mm,
Imagine that. Imagine being
yeah.
an owner of a small business and being, the key contact that is involved in everything at the time. I was involved in everything that happened in the business, and not being there for your
Hmm.
employees, for your customers, for your suppliers for a year. Imagine doing that.
Yeah. What did you
Yeah.
do? How did your business keep running?
Well, one of the things that I learned earlier on, I mentioned to you that I used to be in ERP and CRM systems, so I learned about automation
Mm,
early on. This is way before AI and workflow automation was
yeah.
a key term. And so I had implemented automation in my business for every aspect of the business, from marketing to sales to operations, accounting. There was some form of automation in the process,
Mm,
and in part of it as well was guiding somebody through a process. So for example, in our sales process, when you would have a conversation with a lead, your CRM system would pop up saying you have to follow this step and ask these questions and collect this information. So
hmm.
every step of the way, it would collect information, and at the end, you would have all the notes of what you discussed, and then it would take you through the process of uh, preparing the quote, for example. So I had that already implemented in my business. That's what kept my business going.
Mm,
That, and of
yeah.
course, amazing people, right? So,
Yeah.
and amazing clients that were understanding. So everything combined just kept working even when I wasn't there. What's interesting, Sonia, is that I learned a lot during that time. I learned a lot. I learned that, hey, my business doesn't need me all the time.
Right? It's not
Yeah.
so dependent on you anymore, right?
That's right. So I started. Well, I focused on recovery, which took me another maybe year or two to recover completely. So a total of like 2 or 3 years, two to 3 years to recover completely and start feeling like myself again, because I was suffering through anxiety, and it was a big thing for me to try to learn how to cope with it. But once that settled, then I started working on how do I replace myself? And excuse me, it's been a journey, and it's been interesting. And I'm getting there. I'm not there yet,
Mm, Yeah.
because there's always something that kind of throws you off track, and it shouldn't, but it did. But and I don't want to get into it right now, but I'm on my way to replacing myself, and I haven't had a chance to tell you this, but I am moving to Portugal
You
permanent.
are, right?
Yeah. So
Good for you.
yeah, that's my 5-year plan. And so I have to replace myself
Yeah.
between now and then, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to continue running my business, but I want to work on my business, not in my business.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's the
smart.
plan.
It's almost like, going through what you went through. Obviously, nobody wants to do that, but it's almost like prior to going through that experience, you had sort of set things up like you knew something was going to happen. But then when it did happen, you were able to recover, focus on that because you had all these systems in place. But it also set up the rest of your business where technically you're like, I could move to another country. I could do this because you've already experienced that you could. All right.
Funny you should bring that up. You're very intuitive, I have to say. Yes, I did set up my business in such a way that I had business continuity plan,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even know it
Yeah. You
at the
you
time.
didn't.
I
Yeah.
didn't even know it, and I think it has a lot to do with my upbringing. As you know, I'm Portuguese, but I was brought up in Angola in Africa, and we left Africa due to the revolution. We had a really good lifestyle there, and unfortunately, we lost everything. I
Yeah.
mean, literally everything. My father had to start all over in a foreign country they had never been to. None of the kids spoke English, so we had to learn the language.
Yeah.
We had to start from scratch, and I remember, having to go to Salvation Army to buy our clothes, which
Yeah.
we never had to do any of that before. We had a really good lifestyle, and so I think that really left a mark for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that anything can happen, and you should be prepared for it,
Yeah.
as prepared as can be. So I think I prepared myself for a situation without even realizing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it. One of the things I always like to talk about with every entrepreneur is, I like to call it failures. Everyone's like, Sonia, stop using that word, but I like failures because they're an opportunity to learn. I guess maybe the word failure doesn't sound great, but that's my story and I'm sticking with it. So, um, you know, have you, I mean, I'm sure you've had lots of lessons learned, but was there a period when you were running your business where you had something really go wrong, really, not go the way you had planned it, and we can call it a fail. And what did you learn from that?
Many, many lessons. One of them we just talked about
Yeah.
in 2012. I think the most recent one was in 2020, 2019, actually.
Mm-hmm.
2019, I used to be very much focused in a vertical market that was new, which was cannabis. And
Mm.
and I was able to build the business really, really quick because I made some great contacts in the industry, and I positioned myself as an expert in the industry. Excuse me, and the industry was growing very rapidly. Um, Cannabis became legal in 2018, so by 2019 and 2020, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But I became too reliant on that
Oh.
industry, right? And then my biggest clients were in the cannabis industry. In 2020, just before COVID, or actually it started in late 2019, and then up to 2020, just before COVID, I lost 51% of my business.
Wow.
Yeah. Would you call that a failure?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Right? That was a big hit. And Sonia, I tried everything, every possible angle to keep those clients on board. You know, I said, look,
Yeah.
I'm a cybersecurity expert. I can help you guys. And you take care of the day-to-day stuff, and I'll take care of your cybersecurity because it requires management. And they said, no, you know, we have an IT department. The reality was what they were saying was, I don't know you, and I think we can deal with it ourselves. It wasn't,
Ourselves.
you know, it wasn't
Yeah.
that my services weren't a fit for them. You know, they just didn't know who I was because the companies were acquired by large corporations, mostly from the U.S., and they already had their IT department, so they felt they just didn't need me, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a domino effect, one after another, bang, bang,
Wow.
bang. And so I learned a hard lesson.
Don't
That
put all your eggs in one basket.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be very diversified. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of or small businesses that when they acquire the big whale, so to speak, you know, they're like, oh wow, this is amazing. Now we're going to grow, and it is amazing. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. But you want to be careful that you don't become too dependent on that big whale, so to speak,
Yeah.
because you're going to hire staff just to serve that client. You're going to you know, adapt to them, and what happens when things change.
Mm-hmm.
And I know so many of my competitors that had to sell their business because they were losing their big client or their
Mm.
biggest clients. Maybe it was multiple clients, right? And so that happens a lot. You have to be careful that you don't become completely dependent. That was the lesson I learned from that experience. So
Yeah.
you know, there are many more failures that I could tell you, but I think you know, for the sake of time, I think that pretty much explains, you know, the fact that we all go through failures and we all
Yeah.
learn lessons from it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the key is
Yeah.
take it as a lesson. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yes, failure sounds like a very negative word. There's a negative
Word.
connotation to it, but you can spin it around and think of it as a blessing, as a lesson, as
Yeah.
something that's positive because you
Yeah.
grow from it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to admit, you're the only person I've ever interviewed that actually said that the biggest fail was from having all of your eggs in one basket. I don't think that's something that, you're actually making me think because I have a business that is a very specific niche, and I'm like, you know, like you got to think about that. But that goes
Yeah.
for anybody who's starting to think about, you know, building a business. Like, is your portfolio of sales diversified, right? Or if it's not, start thinking about that now,
Yeah.
because even if you have to pivot your business, if it's not going the way you want it to go, how can you pivot? And is there a different industry that you can go into that's going to help support that pivot, right?
Look, you know, for me, I was very fortunate that when I lost 51% of my business, that I still had another 49%,
Yeah.
right? And that I could still build from that. But the timing couldn't have been worse, right? It was
Yeah.
right before COVID.
COVID.
And so I had to find ways to rebuild, but at the same time, I had to manage this thing called COVID and how to navigate through it. So it took me some time to
Yeah.
rebuild. But I would say for any entrepreneur out there, excuse me, always think about having, you know, the smaller clients are the foundation of your
Yeah.
business because you have a more personal relationship with them. They're going to be there for you if you treat them well. And if one leaves, it's not so impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but they are the foundation of the business, right? It's what supports everything else up above, right? So, just make sure that you have a good balance of smaller clients that continue to love you and can continue to be committed to you, right?
Yeah.
That was a lesson that I learned from it, and today I'm very diversified. In fact, I don't want to depend on that big whale anymore
Yeah.
that is going to force me to change my business. I don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah.
I would rather have slightly smaller clients and more of them. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion, a different opinion to it.
Yeah.
Um, if you are geared to work with very large clients, that's a whole different story. But for me, it's a mix of small,
Yeah.
mid-size.
Well, I mean, just to add to what you just said, I mean, like big clients are great, but as a small business, taking on a big whale, it gets so much harder because they will control your business. They will make you change your business to support them. And I've had experiences with large companies that are a little bit kind of bullies. And
Yeah,
they knew that they were a big client for us, and they basically told us what to do every step of the way. And it was like really hard to manage an account like that.
it is hard to manage, and it's not just on you; it's on your entire staff, right?
Yeah.
And then they start resenting that client. They don't want to talk to them. They don't want to service them,
Yeah.
and then eventually you'll lose them
Oh, I
because
did. We lost the
yeah,
entire team after a while because nobody wanted to work on that account.
yeah. So you
Yeah.
have to be aware of that as a leader of the business, that choosing the right clients is very, very important.
Yeah.
And let me just clarify my previous statement that I don't want the big whale. If the big whale comes along and it's the right fit,
Yeah.
bring it on.
Yeah. But
So
I think it's the key with what you just said. It has to
yeah,
be the right fit. And fit
yeah,
can be a lot of different things. Fit can
yes,
be your belief system. Are they the kind of company that believe in the same things that we believe? Is the
right.
founder or the person running it, are they similar to me? You know what I mean? Those are things that I think is important to think about. It's not just about how much revenue are they going to bring down the road.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things to think about, and I find that if you can align yourselves with your clients on a company culture
Mm-hmm.
basis, sometimes you can make anything happen because you
True.
have similar culture. And you and I talked about this, right? I felt that
Yeah.
you and your team had a similar culture as we do, so things just kind of happen naturally.
Yeah.
They're not forced. They're not, I we're not skeptical. Either one of us is skeptical of each other,
Yeah.
right? It just
Yeah.
happens naturally, and that's what I look for in clients, is that we have alignment from a cultural perspective.
I love it. Well, we're coming up on time. This has been a
Okay.
really great conversation. But before we wrap up, I just want to, ask, you have so much experience. You've been in the industry for so long. What advice would you give an aspiring entrepreneur who dreams of building a successful business? One piece of advice that you could give.
Oh wow, it's hard to just choose one, but
Okay, two or three.
okay, let's start with the most important when you're getting started.
Okay,
Put a business plan together.
that's a good point.
Put a business plan together. You know how many people do that? Not
Not
enough.
very many. Okay.
Not
Yeah.
enough. So when I first started my first IT company, that's what I did. I put a business plan together. And yeah, I think I took a business plan that existed from TD Bank. When you go in for a loan, they give you this business plan. And so I took the basis of that, and then I did some research and I found other questions that were important. So I built my own at the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I figured I may as well do it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it from start to finish.
Yeah.
And putting that business plan together helped me tremendously, because it's basically an opportunity to think about, where are you starting at? Where do you need to go? How are you going to scale to get there?
Mm-hmm.
Goals, objectives. How much do you need to invest in marketing, for example? How much do you need to invest in staff? What does that look like on paper?
Yeah.
So you're essentially imagining the growth, the startup and the growth of your business on paper.
Yeah.
People don't realize how important that is. And then once you have that business plan and you've started your business, it doesn't stop there. You
Yeah.
have to have your goals and objectives and review them every 90 days. Here's the thing. If you want to go to, I don't know, Saskatchewan, you're in Toronto, you want to go to drive to Saskatchewan, what are you going to do? You're going to get a map.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going to go to Google or whatever map service you use, and you're going to put your destination in, and it's going to tell you how you're going to get there, how long it's going to take to get there. Maybe you want to stop for lunch or dinner or gas or whatever. You can plan that as well. And once you have that in place, you know exactly where you're going and how long it's going to take you there to get there. Right? This is the same idea. Goal, the business plan, and then followed through with goals and objectives is exactly that. It's how you're going to achieve those results, those objectives. So, not enough business owners do that.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody starting out, I would suggest focus just on that, because it'll give you a clear indication of what you need to do on a day-to-day basis to achieve those results. And to take it one step further, in your on a day-to-day basis, you should think about 3 things before your day starts. Think about 3 things that you need to do to achieve the results that will get you closer to your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Write those things down and make them happen throughout the day.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Love it. Well, Miguel, thank you so much for joining me today and for being open to sharing your experience and being authentic with your health and things like that. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I hope this helps somebody to guide them in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Miguel, thank you for sharing your incredible journey with us today. From the early days of building VBS IT services to the lessons learned through personal and professional challenges, your story reminds us that success isn't just about hard work, it's also about having the right systems, the right mindset, and a willingness to adapt and innovate. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, growth, and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and connect with our community on social media. I'd love to hear your feedback, so leave a review and let me know what topics you'd want to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace challenges, adapt with tenacity, and keep pushing forward. Keep growing, keep pivoting, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.